Uh, Greetings, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Um, and for those who haven't joined us before, my name's Cujo or Josh. We got Dan up top there. And I'm pointing in relation to my screen, Dave over there, and Alex in the corner. So, welcome everybody. Appreciate having you guys here. We do have a couple different news articles I do want to cover. Some of them are. Uh, Interesting, as is this first one that's coming out of the Federal Register, in which a couple organizations reached out to the FAA in relation to Lance, and has basically said that the approval process needs to be expanded somewhat. And essentially, what that means is they want more collection of data, both prior to and after flight, in the Lance system. They're basically saying it's too easy to get into the air in controlled airspace. So for those who don't know what Lance is, that's the uh, geez, I
Trying to
forgot my
remember what the
acronyms
acronym
now.
stands for. It's what you need to
Yeah.
do to
Low,
get
Low altitude
authorization.
authorization notification capability.
Thank you. Perfect. So low altitude authorization notification capability, or LANT. And that's access through programs like Aloft, where you can go in, request authorization to fly in controlled airspace, and get near instant feedback on whether you're capable of doing that or not.
Yeah, so basically, if
Um,
you're trying to fly roughly 5 miles from an airport, you need to use Lance to get authorization to fly up to whatever the altitude of how close you are to the airport and all
mhm.
that stuff to fly legally.
And it works in cooperation with the FAA facility maps, to determine how high you're able to fly. The closer you are, the lower you are able to fly.
And
The
since
biggest
some of
comment.
us use it and a lot of people don't use it, they just want to throw even more barriers at the people who are too lazy to use it to begin with.
So the biggest comments come from the Airline Pilots Association, or ALPA, and they commented that the collection of information to process authorization requests has not been subject to sufficient safety risk evaluation, and therefore cannot be fully determined whether the information collected is adequate to verify if safe operations can be conducted. Believes that the FAA's current minimum requirements for information and low altitude authorization, and notification capability are not sufficient. According to them, them being ALPA, additional information, including aircraft registration, make and model information, and post-flight information, should be collected. So one of the things that crossed my mind when this first came across is, once remote ID is active, mm, most of that information is going to be transmitted. Um, and with the exception of broadcast modules, in which case it'll transmit the serial number of the broadcast module. So in this information collection renewal request, the FAA proposes to use Lance and the web portal to collect information that provides a means for small UAS operators, um, operating under 44809, to comply with 44809's established requirements and safety processes. This proposed information collection is sufficient to meet safety standards and captures essential information. Um, so it says ALPA also commented that the FAA has not determined through its safety management system process the risk that UAS operating in controlled airspace introduced to the national airspace, and therefore ALPA is unable to determine if the information collected is adequate. So
So
they're
if only they
basically
had a
pushing
risk
for more
assessment that they
information.
could tell us that it doesn't pose much of a risk.
Right? Like 80 years of operation in the airspace. I mean,
All right. So let us pat ourselves on the back for this one, because of the reputation that we've established with the crewed or manned aircraft community. I picked up the phone and called our friends in Alpa, and I mean that sincerely. These are people who have helped us understand FAA regulations, who and how to work the system, and we'll see if there's a way that we can work together on this. But we're talking to ALPA about what is it that they want to propose to the FAA, and that's a real positive, and patting ourselves on the back because we're able to just make a direct phone call and get involved in this. So
I
that's
mean, and it seems
that's
like a lot of
positive.
this information is overlapped. So, like I said before, once remote ID rolls out, a good chunk of this information will be transmitted by remote ID, whether it be
Yeah.
standard remote ID or broadcast module. Now, the question is what information do they need to know after the fact? I mean, if there was an incident, we already have the NASA safety reporting system that takes 30 minutes to fill out a form, and we can push out any kind of issues there
Yeah,
confident within confidential means or anonymous
Yeah, I
means.
don't. Yeah, I agree with you, Josh, and I don't brush this aside. This worries me from the perspective that it's a possible opening of the door about network, in addition to broadcast. And so we all
Absolutely.
know that with remote ID, the FAA declared no network capability with remote ID, just broadcast, and this could open the door to let network back in, which of course the unmanned traffic management people would love to see as well.
Absolutely.
So
So
yeah, I'm not. This is non-trivial, and but good for us that we've got access at least.
and thank you, Alex, for finding this for us. Great work on that as well. All right. So this one came from Dan. I did see this in the news before he sent it, but this is a pretty interesting take on what's going on with Express LRS.
Yeah, the really weird
And
thing for me is that this popped up like 3 or 4 times in my computer like networking security mailing lists and websites and stuff. It's like, whoa, why is the Express LRS showing up at my work related stuff, not at my hobby related stuff? And it was just really odd to see it there. And a lot of those articles definitely, like, the people reading them don't know much about drones in general, so they're seeing this
right,
like, oh, well, there's a flaw in drone control, but they don't know that like this isn't something used by DJI. This isn't something
yeah.
used by tons and tons of drones. It's yeah, well,
And
it's
this
what
is
we
the
Did
know.
funny
you
part is that anything with a drone, when it comes to quadcopters, they always slap a DJI
Right.
picture. It's so ridiculous.
That Mavic's
But
not using Express LRS.
no, it sure
Yep.
isn't.
Dan,
And
did you have a chance to digest what the implication of this might be?
I read it a little bit. I didn't really dig into the details of how the flaw works.
So, and I can go over that. Actually a pretty interesting kind of thing. So, it's using essentially Express LRS uses a binding phrase is what they call it, and it covers it right here. So the binding phrase is about 75% of the binding code or the seed, the randomly generated seed, and that's transmitted over open air. So if anybody is basically sniffing that, they get 75% of the um, command to basically take over the drone. And after that, it's a pretty easy crack to come up with the last two parts of the seed and be able to take it over. So essentially, this is part of the bind phase, and it's an identifier that makes sure the correct transmitter is talking to the correct receiver. And it's not for security; it's for anti-collision, essentially, so that no, like a transmitter and a receiver talk exclusively to each other, as opposed, when there's multiple in the air. So, due to weaknesses related to the binding phase, it's possible to extract part of the identifier shared between the receiver and transmitter, according to the recent technical advisory. Um, this helps to find out the remaining portion of the identifier. Once the full identifier is discovered, it's possible to use an attacker's transmitter to control the craft containing the receiver with no knowledge of the binding phrase. So it's a pretty bad deal.
So
essentially,
don't use ExpressLRS if you're flying some really sensitive, gigantic drone that
So,
someone might want to take over.
so one thing that I heard some of the Express LRS people saying is this doesn't just affect Express LRS,
and that's the point I was going to bring up.
yep, it also affects other controlling systems too, supposedly.
Yeah. So my question comes in is how many different transmitter receiver manufacturers are utilizing the same process to bind their transmitters and receivers. So it's a bad deal all around. And at first I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so is FR Sky affected by something like this? Is Crossfire affected by this? Is what else is affected by this? So hopefully people who run those different protocols are looking at this and looking at the flaws in this and coming back and saying, okay, so we need to fix this.
Related to similar to this, if you have any recent Honda car, there's a similar attack where you can capture the signal from your remote and replay it to your car and unlock any Honda car that was made in the past few years.
Yeah, since 2012.
Oh god,
so that's a lot of cars on the market.
The text chat brings up a good point in that what's the probability of someone taking over your drone, and I think
pretty
that's
low.
I think this could
lower
create
than getting shot down probably.
Well, this could create effectively a counter UAS or a jamming capability that would be nasty. But yeah, all of the planets lining up and all of your settings being the same that someone could actually fly, your craft pretty low.
I would see this more as being some article that people who want to scare people about drones will point to in the future to say, see, they're not safe. It's not secure.
It's not encrypted. None of that C2 link is encrypted.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably more likely to get your drone shot out of the sky than get taken over by this.
I mean,
neither of those things happen.
What's the point? Like, why would somebody want to take over our FPV drones or take over drone? Well, maybe if you wanted to really cheat at your multi-GP racing, you'd interfere with somebody.
That is not a suggestion, Alex.
But
well, no, I'm thinking it's an excuse for when I crash.
Right. Oh, somebody else was flying.
My drone. Oh, jeez. I need a redo.
I saw this image of this guy.
That's
just
funny.
Before I crashed.
All right, so this is coming out of this is a very short article. I just thought it was pretty interesting. So this is coming out of Crawfordsville, Indiana. No idea where that is. I didn't even look up the town. But as the use of drones and unmanned aircraft systems are gaining in popularity, the city of Crawfordsville is taking steps to regulate their use. The city council members approved the first reading of an ordinance that will regulate the operations of UAS in the cities. The council aims to adopt a similar ordinance already in place in West Lafayette, which states that UAS must remain in visual line of sight of the pilot. Okay, it already does that. The ordinance also states that UASs may not be flown higher than 50 feet. That might be a problem with preemption. And that no person may launch a UAS over public property or any person's property without prior consent. So that's about the only part of this that I feel is probably going to be a sticking point. But again, I think this is going to be a little bit of a preemption nightmare if this ever has to go to court.
And where was this again?
It's in Crawfordsville, Indiana.
Okay.
Yes, governments are still doing this stuff. Don't
still
expect
trying.
it to end anytime soon. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that there's still a lot of fear out there about drones, and I think I know they always lose in the courts, but that's one of the things that we work to try and curtail is highlighting a lot of drones for good situations and the positives of drones and that kind of thing. And as companies go in and do drone delivery, or agriculture, like farmers start utilizing drones for agricultural work, you know those are the things that are going to highlight the drones for good, and there's a lot of that happening right now. In fact, I probably see more drones for good articles out there than I see negatives a whole lot. And I know I bring, a little bit of both to these meetings, but I think the winds are changing a smidge compared to, a couple years ago.
This is the first time I've seen one try to limit the height to 50 feet. That just seems
I know, it's
ridiculous.
kind of a little bit.
And is there anything in there about, like, what if police or firefighters want to use one and launch it over
No.
a public road, or like?
No,
like-
literally, it's just 2 paragraphs. That's it. It's a very short news article.
So much for those drone for good stories in
I know, right?
Crawfordsville, Indiana.
I
They're all
know.
grounded.
A little bit cranky over there, apparently. All right, so this one is a little different. So the FBI is using a system to detect drones over wildfires, as well as the pilot. So the FBI
They're detecting
is
drones
using,
over pilots?
I said, and the pilot. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is using a new system to help wildland firefighters detecting, identifying, and neutralizing drones that are illegally interfering with firefighting activities. First off, I am going on record as saying, please don't fly your drones over wildfires. There's a lot going on in those areas, and unless you have the explicit permission of whoever's in charge of those incidents, please don't do it. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. You could put people in danger. You could put planes and helicopters in danger who are working to fight those fires. And as somebody from a state that has a lot of this going on, a lot of the time it's very dangerous. So I have friends who go out and do hot shots, where they go out and they fight wildfires during the summers here in Arizona. So please, please, please don't do that. So they're going to reiterate here, it's very dangerous to fly a drone near a fire at which helicopters or fixed-wing aircraft are operating. A collision could impact the windscreen, damage an engine, props, rotors, or flight control surfaces, causing a crash. If the drone is seen near a fire, the standard operating procedure is to remove all aircraft from the fire area until it's confirmed the drone has left the scene. And that puts more property and land in danger, right? So imagine being responsible because you wanted to get good pictures of a wildfire, that somebody's house got burned down, that they couldn't contain a fire in time to stop that from happening. I'd feel like pretty trash if that happened. So the FBI is working with the LA County Fire Department to use a system that can detect a drone flying over the fire within 30 seconds of it being launched. When the detection equipment finds the drone and identifies the operator's location, we can very rapidly get that information to a ground intercept team who can then go make contact with that drone operator and essentially get them to stop flying that drone. With a special sensor, the team can set up a boundary as large or as small as desired and get notified if a drone flies in that area, instantly obtaining precise details such as elevation, direction, speed, as well as where the drone took off from and where the controller is currently standing. So I'm assuming they're utilizing, it doesn't say how it works, but I assume they're using some kind of audio to capture that. Maybe some kind of digital signal sniffer.
Isn't this exactly what Aeroscope does? Couldn't they just be
Yeah.
using that?
Yeah, and I question the efficacy of it when it comes to, maybe not a DJI drone or not a commercial off-the-shelf drone.
Mm-hmm.
But at the
Yeah,
same time,
we're
go ahead.
we're hearing that there are radar systems that can pick up
There are other
non
systems out there.
DJI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, flying over a wildfire is a federal crime, punished by up to 12 months in prison. To interfere, if you interfere with firefighting efforts on public land, and you could face a penalty of up to $20,000 from the FAA. So in 2019, at least 20 documented instances of unauthorized drone flights over near wildfires in 7 states. That would be Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, Washington, and Minnesota. And that got operations shut down 9 different times. That's a bad deal all around. So anyway, don't do it.
Yeah, I don't know what the wildfire situation has been out in the West this year, but so far where I'm at, it hasn't been bad at all compared to like last year. We
I
had
think it's
smoke and wildfires everywhere.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything recently, so hopefully but it's hot as Hades here, so
No
I mean,
wildfires here.
yeah, I mean it's not far off. I mean, here's the issue in Arizona, right? It's dry all year long, but our monsoon season's coming up, in which we get a lot of our storms, and a lot of those are insane thunderstorms. So it's dry, and a lightning strike can set off something. An errant camper can set off something. People getting out of the city to go up north for a little bit, they can, a cigarette butt or a campfire just not maintained. That kind of stuff can really cause some problems. All right, so let's see. We've got UAS and firefighting. So I'm keeping the firefighting theme going here. How unmanned systems can help keep the environment safe. Firefighting services worldwide are constantly innovating. And the recent trend towards using UAVs is no exception. With climate change is creating even warmer, drier conditions, increasing the risk of drought and a longer season when fire is a real risk in many parts of the world. UAVs, also known as remotely piloted aircraft systems, can we just come up with one? Goodness. Is rapidly becoming a standard tool for use at the scene of a fire. They are a useful addition to the equipment, and many firefighters have come to rely on the information they provide during and after a major fire incident. So uses of unmanned aerial vehicles in firefighting are going to be fire scene monitoring and assessment, and this is really key. So they can figure out where hotspots are, identify maybe where they need to move to contain a fire, and then search and rescue. Obviously, one of the bigger, more important parts of fighting a fire is saving lives, and then post-fire analysis and scene documentation. So a lot of what I'm seeing in terms of both police use and firefighter use is this kind of documentation where they'll go up and take images so that they can document what's going on, and it could help with the investigation on what caused the fire, that kind of thing. And this also happens with police. If they're doing crime scene documentation, they can utilize drones to take those images and preserve the entire crime scene via that way. So the integration of lightweight and increasingly capable radiometric thermal sensors has revolutionized the amount of information available to a fire scene commander, and information is key when lives are at stake. Whether planning an ingress route to access a fire in a building or structure or searching for people inside, thermal imagery can see through the smoke to locate individuals in hotspots while keeping firefighters safe. When using manned platforms during such operations, highly skilled pilots are required due to the reduced visibility when flying into smoke fire. The risk may be mitigated using uncrewed, remotely piloted, or automatically commanded platforms, thereby reducing stress and operator fatigue. So, one of the things that has long time been a thing for UAS is it takes the danger out of it, right? Whether you're flying FPV as opposed to flying a fixed wing helicopter, you can do different things with the UAV because you're not putting yourself in danger. So you can get the aircraft in there, you can see what's going on, and at worst case, all you're going to lose is a drone, right? So pretty interesting little thing. So they're using this drone, this UAS up here. It's a helicopter, as a case study. So UAVs have been used for several years to help combat fire, working in conjunction with firefighters and other public safety professionals. Aircraft manufacturers are introducing products with quick startup functions, high reliability, state-of-the-art thermal sensors, longer flight durations, and importantly, waterproofing for all weather and all condition operation. The use of AI, data analysis, and drone technology is giving fire departments a new suite of tools to combat fires that are growing in size, frequency, and intensity. UAVs are robust tools that can be operated regardless of weather conditions. And these tools are also proving to be very useful to firefighters in the air. So, pretty cool. The article goes on to identify a couple different things about UAVs, but expect to see more of this. I mean, two things is one, safety in terms of not putting a pilot at risk, and number two, full scale aircrafts are way more expensive to both own and operate by a lot of agencies. This is an entry point for them to be able to help people in their communities, without having to essentially break the city budget to do so. So, pretty incredible. All right. So we go from a small city in Indiana looking to limit drones from 50 feet or to no higher than 50 feet to folks in Virginia doing beyond visual line of sight. So
Virginia's a nice state for that.
So, Remington, Virginia, for years, there's been a cardinal rule for flying civilian drones: keep them within your line of sight. Not just because it's a good idea, it's also the law. But some drones have recently gotten permission to soar out of their pilot's sight. And this has been happening a lot with the FAA. They've increasingly given more waivers to be able to do beyond visual line of sight. They've got corridors set up where this is where they're testing beyond visual line of sight. Um, Drones can now inspect high voltage power lines across the forested Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia, and they're tracking endangered sea turtles off Florida's coast and monitoring seaports in the Netherlands and railroads from New Jersey to the rural West. Aviation authorities in the U.S. and elsewhere are preparing to relax some of the safeguards they impose to regulate a boom in off-the-shelf consumer drones over the past decade. Businesses want simpler rules that could open your neighborhood skies to new commercial applications of these low-flying machines, although privacy advocates and some airplane and balloon pilots remain wary. For now, a small but growing group of power companies, railways, and delivery services like Amazon are leading the way. Well, that Amazon's really leading the way, but with special permission to fly drones beyond visual line of sight. As of early July, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has approved 230 of such waivers, one of them to Virginia-based Dominion Energy for inspecting its network of power plants and transmission lines. Let's see. They go on to talk about railway inspection from BNSF, who is using Skydio drones to do some of that. Let's see. The FAA said it is still reviewing how it will roll out routine operations, enabling some drones to fly beyond visual line of sight, although it has signaled that the permissions will be reserved for commercial applications and not hobbyists. So there's that. But there's a lot of this going on. There's I know Walmart's with at least two different drone companies, Zipline and one other.
Drone up.
Drone up?
Yeah.
Drone
Thank
up?
you. Drone up. And for
Google is huge, and
delivery, Google
BNSF
Wing.
is also running their own homebrew drone over 28,000 miles of track.
Yep.
So they've been at this for
a
6 years.
while. Yeah.
Yeah.
So expect to see more of this. I do know that the ultimate goal is that you shouldn't need a waiver for this process at all. This is coming from Adam Bry of Skydio. A lot of other users are saying that drones are blind to other aircraft in the sky, which is absolutely untrue. There's a lot of detect and avoid systems, especially in drones like Skydio, as well as different operations with DJI has ADS-B in, so they can identify aircraft in the air, that kind of stuff. So, anywho, I don't want to take up the whole evening here, but I do have two more. Um, let's see. This is something that we recently talked about is and I believe Vic Moss actually talked about were the rules in state parks in Oregon, restricting drones over that. And this is kind of an update. For the last 100 years, the state parks in Oregon have been an attraction to view various plant life, bodies of water, and animal species. However, a new addition to state parks is something that Oregonians couldn't have foreseen even a few decades ago: drones piercing the skies. There are no regulations on drone flight, takeoff, or landing within state parks. The parks can only make airborne regulations during certain mating seasons. Just because people are free to fly drones through parks doesn't mean that they are free from controversy. So when a work group convened by the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department put together a proposal for drone regulation in state parks at the end of 2021 and asked for public input, it didn't take long to receive backlash. The proposal stated that drones would be allowed to take off anywhere unless otherwise specified. The vagueness of the law prompted people to ask Chris Havel, Associate Director of the Oregon State Parks and Recreation Department, if their worst fears were possible. Either we're going to have a cloud of drones over every park or a wildlife desert in every park, he said. So they've put this on hold for the time being to continue on without taking the entire evening, but they've put this on hold. They're going to reconvene a rulemaking process to bring in different people to see how they're going to essentially attack this issue for Oregon. Let's see. The work group is still formulating a map and criteria for the parks. Once it's done, the group will give its proposal to the agency director, who will decide the rulemaking process should restart. It's a process not likely to happen in 2022.
So does this mean they got so much feedback about when they asked for feedback that they're struggling with it?
Yeah, it does. And it basically, there's people who are pro drone that are saying, yeah, let us fly in the parks. And there's people who are pro wildlife that's saying drones flying in parks is going to affect wildlife. I have flown in Oregon, and I do know that they do restrict certain areas, especially along the coast. I did get asked to stop flying while I was on the coast, which was fine, not a big deal. Happy to comply, but there's a lot of areas where it's pretty open. So there's a lot of state park in Oregon, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But anywho, let's see. This is the last one. This is interesting. I didn't know that you could do this, so I learned something today, is that you can create a FOIA request into the FAA's registration data. And through doing that, Ag Eagle requested a FOIA request looking for the types of commercial drones that, let's see, I just want to make sure I word this correctly. Yeah, let's see. According to the company's analysis of official FAA Part 107 commercial drone registration data supplied to Ag Eagle pursuant to its FOIA request, the EB was the commercial UAS of choice for U.S. commercial drone operators, outnumbering all other fixed-wing drones registered, including VTOL aircraft, by a large margin.
It's definitely one of those cases where if a survey is funded by a certain company and they're the one who released the results, you just have to question it a little bit. Like, what exactly was the FOIA request?
Right.
Well,
so
you could also submit your own FOIA and do the math too.
You could.
Right. Yeah. So the EB, Ag Eagle's EB accounted for 41% of all commercial fixed-wing drone registrations in the nation since 2016. So now that is specific to fixed wing. Obviously, that doesn't count for quadcopters or anything multi-rotor, but which I would imagine a
Could be
good chunk
DJI.
of, yeah, I was gonna say. So um
And they can't tell for recreational because you don't put it aircraft for
Correct.
recreational.
you can, but you're not required to. All right. So anyway, I just thought that was funny. But that's about all I've got. Dave, what do you got for us, sir?
Still cranking away with the drone safety team. We're not supposed to talk about what's going on there. All proprietary. It's killing me.
Makes me
So, we're being good souls and trying to contribute to the safety of the NAS.
So is that the charter or the goal of the drone safety team, is to contribute to the safety of the national airspace, or is there more detail than that?
It is. It is to enable. Part of the mission is to enable safe operation and integration of UAS into the national airspace, and to do it in a data-driven manner.
Well,
all right.
they've done a great job because there have been no deaths associated with drone use in the national airspace.
I have
Sounds
brought that
perfectly
up.
safe.
All right, more than once. Yeah.
So less
and-
regulations, right?
Yeah.
Well, no,
Sure.
this is evidence that more regulations are even better. Because the current ones are keeping everybody safe, so we just gotta keep adding
But
more.
what about the data from before the regulations were there?
Oh boy, yeah, a little frustration coming out, but yeah, and the I think as we probably mentioned, we had the AAAC on 30 June, and no new taskings, and the consensus from a number of folks is interesting. Well, we do observe that there's a new executive deputy director of the UAS integration office, and that is Abby Smith. And Abby comes with good ATC, air traffic control, air traffic management background. And any of the ATC people, and we've worked with a bunch of them, have just been top notch and very practical. So we're optimistic that that's what Abby will bring to the table in her new assignment as the executive director, reporting to Jay Merkel.
So they must be just taking a little break as things change around. But I was surprised that they didn't have some new urban air mobility related tasking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tasking as well as approvals of the 6 empty seats on the DAC, which were allocated to AAM. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
those been empty for a while now.
About almost a year. So lots of things happening behind the curtain.
Well, the whole government is DARPA tech shit. It's fine.
They're all thinking they worked on a black project. Yeah, so that is
It's
so well said. Yeah, TextJet, we're with you. Yeah, if I tell you, I'll have to kill you.
It's goofy. I mean, here's the thing: is one of the things that from our perspective, or at least from my perspective, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but one of the things that the Reauthorization Act tasked the FAA with is working with stakeholders, and stakeholders, I think it has a different definition to a lot of people than what it has to the general public, but for them, stakeholders are anybody that they can convince to kind of go the way that they need them to go, and in our eyes, stakeholders is going to be anybody who's doing the flying, right? So whether that's companies who are innovating, like could be Skydio, or it could be, I say it with gritted teeth, but Amazon or Google Wing or anybody like that.
Iris Automation, good innovators.
Yeah, Iris, Zipline. Those are going to be your key commercial stakeholders. But then you've got people like the independent commercial operators, right? People that like Vic Moss represent and Kenji represent, and then you've got the biggest group of all, that 9 times out of 10 has the smallest representation, if any at all, which would be the recreational operators. And so, but I think they've created this pocket for themselves in which they have yet to approve CBOs, so they can't say, well, CBOs are going to be our stakeholders, should be. So, well, we can't create those because we haven't decided how that's going to work yet, even though it's supposed to happen, 2.5 years ago. But so they don't have to work with us, So it causes a lot of drama. So
And
yeah,
that's why,
everybody's out of
one of
pocket.
the things I'm very optimistic with Abby Smith coming in. She is keenly interested in STEM programs, and she is also thrilled with the gender neutral language tasking group that we were a key part of. So, good piece of work there. And we're also, of course, involved in the Alex and I were both involved in the K through 12 tasking group. So we will come to meet Abby with uh, some credentials already, and we will remind her of our good partnership with Flight Test and their Flight Test STEM program, and also their far reach, just as you mentioned, Josh, to millions of recreational UAS operators.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's what we'd like to see is a lot of recreational representation because we are the ones most in the sky, and it's very important to get that kind of feedback. So, but anywho, I'm off my soapbox for 5 seconds. So, Alex, you got anything for us, bud? Any races coming?
Recently,
Races coming up?
I think I've had races every weekend the past 4 weeks, I think,
Nice.
and then one coming up this weekend.
You still have drones in the air?
Surprisingly, yes.
Oh man,
Uh,
you must be getting
I
better
was
then.
Either that or he's not trying hard enough.
well, no one's hacked into my ghost yet.
Hey, there you go. There you
And don't use ELRS.
go.
Yeah, I was before this. I was flying. I was at my local field practicing the global qualifier.
Nice.
So
Excellent.
got about 2.5 hours of flight time in.
Wow.
Oh, that's dedication.
Great.
Yeah,
go.
tomorrow's gonna be a repair day though.
So maybe we overestimated you.
Well, no, I flew the same quad the entire time
Hey, that's good.
for about I think maybe it's close to 20 some packs.
Wow.
Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I came
2025.
back from Flight Fest with 2 broken drones. So
How'd you break them
That's,
flying in a big open field in flight test?
hitting gates actually.
Ah, okay.
You're supposed to go through them, not hit them.
Yes, I do. I was
And they're the bigger ones, right?
The huge ones?
No, they're not.
Oh, they're the 5x5?
They're the 5x5s.
Told you needed the 7x6.
I don't need a bigger one. I don't
Smaller
need a bigger
car.
one. Just because I happened to hit it doesn't mean, I needed a bigger one.
You could hit it no matter how big it is.
You're so judgmental.
Oh well.
But yeah. I gotta do some repairs.
We did get some ACK members in goggles and flying a little bit at that DAC meeting.
Yeah,
so,
can you tell us any more about that?
We got Emacs to sponsor some Tiny Hawks, Easy Pilots, which are their V1 Tiny Hawks.
Nice.
And they sent us 2 of those, and during the lunch break for the ACK members, they came over and flew some of those, and they went. Some of them tried to get through some gates.
2 of the guys who you had flying, very notable. The chair of the ACK, Houston Mills, vice president at UPS, and Brian Wynn, president and CEO of AUVSI. So way to go. Yeah. Great job.
And then with Brian Wynn at AUVSI, he also went out to one of the local races with me last weekend. Yeah, this past weekend. And so he came out and visited, took a look, and watched how the race went. He had fun, and so
nice.
Good having him there.
Excellent.
Good job. Great job. Dan, anything for us? Do any flying while you're on vacation?
No, didn't even do any flying. Just enjoyed being on vacation in different ways.
There you go.
Although on one vacation I did isn't really. It's somewhat close to an Air Force base kind of area, flight training stuff, and all of a sudden I heard this like rumbling sound outside and went out on the deck and looked up, and there was 2 fighter jets like just zooming around straight above me and dropping flares.
Oh, that's cool.
And even though you could just barely see them up in the sky, it was so loud I couldn't even hear somebody through a sliding patio door that was open. Like
Yep.
they had to wait until they flew away to be able to talk to each other again.
So I used to drive by Luke Air Force Base, and to get to work, and it was really cool because Luke Air Force Base is a training Air Force base, and they do a lot of F-16s and now I think F-35s. But one day I was driving along my path took me right along the start of the runway, and I'm driving and I've got the radio turned up loud and just rolling by, not really thinking anything of it, and all of a sudden my window just starts and I look over and there's an F-16 like him near on full afterburner sitting right there about ready to take off. I thought my truck was gonna go over. It was crazy. I'm surprised my windows didn't break. It was that great. But those things are super loud. They're awesome. Love them.
Yeah, I didn't even look it up, but I was probably in a no-fly area, most likely, if they're doing training flights overhead.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, anybody else have anything for us?
Any questions from anybody in the channel or watching?
Comments? Thoughts? All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Let us know if there's anything we missed, anything you need us to cover, any questions you have. We're available. Do appreciate you guys joining us for this evening, and have a great night.
See you.